Hi, welcome to Kentucky ABRE. This is Module 1 for PBIS, Getting Started. In this module, we're going to talk about all the things you need to do in your school to create a team and drive PBIS. So your first task when you get together is to create a team. And that team's job is to drive PBIS for the school. It's not to run PBIS, it's to facilitate your whole school doing PBIS. So the first thing you need to think about when you put together a team is, does that team represent all of the people that work there? Every adult. It doesn't work well to have a PBIS team that is just special education and or administrators. You want every adult that works in that school to be represented. So at the secondary level, you might want to think about representatives from all the departments. At the elementary level, you might want to think about representation by primary and intermediate, or even by grade level. But also remember your instructional assistants, other classified staff, specialists like school psychologists and counselors, and an administrator is critical. You want for every person in the school to be able to sit and look at that committee and say, someone on there represents me. The goal of this team is to get PBIS implemented across the school, and that's going to start with creating a plan for introducing it to your entire school. Part of that plan is step 1, where you're going to develop some goals and timelines for making that happen. So as you think about that, think about how often your team is going to need to meet. We recommend that your team meet monthly, and that when you meet, you have an agenda and you keep minutes. This is an official committee. It's something that's going to happen regularly to drive decision-making for the whole school. But here's a big idea for that team again. A big idea here is your team should have a culture of care. Your team's job is to have a yes culture for what can we do to create success for all of our kids. Don't forget any of those kids. Think about the kids with disabilities. Think about the kids of varying ethnicities. Think about the kids that come from impoverished families or that have mental health needs. We want to think about how do we, as a committee, drive a school system that makes every kid have the highest probability of being successful. And we're going to use our data to communicate that message. So here's an example. A lot of times when you start thinking about adding a PBIS team, it's just one more team, one more meeting. So one way to think about this is to look at this committee planning grid and think about what committees you already have. Now start thinking, where could we pull from other committees to use on this? For instance, maybe your safety committee is talking about things that fit with PBIS, and maybe your discipline committee completely overlaps with the PBIS committee. It may be that you can pull tasks from other committees or even combine or get rid of some committees to work smarter, not harder. Think about your school and think about its committees. And for each of those committees, think about the purpose, the outcome, the group you're looking at, who's involved, and is it important? Is it a part of your school improvement plan? So back when we did an overview of what is PBIS, we introduced this logic of every kid in the school. And I want to bring it up again. When we talk about how do we do PBIS and why should we want to do it? It's every adult in the school. Cafeteria workers, secretaries, instructional assistants, teachers, all of your specialists, all of your administrators, and it's for every kid, the gifted kids, the kids with disabilities, and every other range of kid and issue that might be there. That's what we're looking at when we do PBIS. So when we say, what do we do for PBIS? Who's involved? A lot of times people have the impression that someone's going to tell them what to do. And this is really important. We need to communicate to all the adults in your school that PBIS is us. We decide what the focus will be. We decide what we monitor. We decide how we monitor. We set our own goals. We decide what we're going to do to get there. We evaluate ourselves and our progress in our school, and we make decisions at the end. Should we keep doing this or should we stop? And those decisions are made based solely on, did it work to make kids more successful? But note that we made all the decisions. So if we're asking schools to do PBIS, if I'm a member of that school faculty, staff, what does it mean for me to vote yes, PBIS? 4 things. 1, I agree that I will provide input on where and when and under what conditions I think kids are going to fail with behavior. Generally, people like doing that. 2, I also agree that I'll tell you what I think we should be teaching to kids and where we should be standing and how we should say it and how we develop environments that make it more likely that kids will be successful. Generally, people like to have a say in what are we going to do about this. Here's the hard one. Number 3, if we're doing PBIS, we're all going to talk about what we should do. We're going to vote, and whatever we get consensus on, we're all going to do. What people need to realize is that consistency is an important part of effective instruction. If some of us decide to go forward and teach this to the students and others of us don't, it won't be as effective as if we all did it. Think about it if we said 2 + 2 = 4 and some teacher said, I'd like it to be 5. You wouldn't expect that you'd have good outcomes for that skill. It doesn't really matter what we decide to do as a school, as much as it is we all decide to teach and encourage the same behaviors. So step 3 is critically important. Well, what if I disagree with one of the strategies? That's why we have step 4. Step 4 is we're going to collect data to determine whether those things worked or didn't work. So we're going to meet once a month and we're going to look and we're going to say, did that strategy work to prevent misbehavior? If it did, we keep doing it. But if I was right, that wasn't a good strategy and the data says it's not, then we're going to change and find a better strategy. So we're always going to be able to demonstrate whether the things we decided to do and did as a school were actually worth doing. But those decisions will be made by data, not by who complains the most, but by whether it makes the effect we wanted on our students. Your next task, task 3, is to think about what's unique about your school. And every school is unique. You have unique kids, you have unique faculty, you have unique layout, you have unique playground, you have unique everything. So you're going to want to start thinking about, I'm going to introduce this to my school. What do they want to talk about? Because if you come into your school and say, hey, here's what PBIS is, we can talk about, and you're talking about something nobody thinks is a problem, nobody really cares. So here's something to consider. Think about what the adults in your school are thinking about in terms of problems they'd like to work on, and then use those problems as the way to introduce PBIS. So here's a way you might do that. You could have a little survey that goes out to all your faculty and staff. And it simply says, what are the problems you see most in this school? Prompt people to think, not just with kids with behavior disorders. What about gifted kids? When and where do they have problems? What about kids that we think come from impoverished backgrounds? What about them? What about kids with disabilities? What about ethnic minorities? Think about all your kids. Where would they be likely to have problems? Now, if you were to deliver something like this to all the adults in your school, and you could do this by sending out an email that's a survey, you could put a paper like this in everybody's mailbox, or you could do this with a discussion. But once you get everybody telling you this, what you're going to do is you're going to be able to drive this down to here are 3 to 5 big problems that everybody agrees on. When you introduce PBIS, those are the problems we should be talking about. Here's an example. This is an elementary school that handed out this survey and said, what do you think the problems are? Well, what their faculty came back with was this. We think our problems are caused by kids with behavior disorders. If we could somehow corral or get rid of those kids, we would have no problems. They knew that wasn't correct, and so what they did was they took that and they got the data. So this graph here shows what really was going on in that school. So when that team introduced PBIS, they showed this graph from the very beginning, and they said, PBIS is about all kids. Now, in our school, kids with behavior disorders have more problems than the average kid, but look, more problems come from non-behavior disordered kids. In fact, 71% of all of our problems come from the average kid. So for us to think about doing PBIS and only focusing on kids with behavior disorders doesn't make sense. PBIS is about every kid in the school. Remember that range. Gifted, disabilities, a range of social status, a range of ethnicities. every kid in the school. We introduce PBIS using the logic. Your final task. Once you get this introduced to your school and they agree, let's do this, then you've got to set up a plan for moving forward. When are you going to meet with the school? Where will that meeting happen? Who's going to run it? How will we organize this? Those are all things you've got to do. Now, we have a PBIS planning worksheet that's available to you. We introduced that in the overview module, but I want to bring it up again that this is something your team can use to say, what are our key tasks at this step? What do we already have in place? What do we need to do? Who's going to do it? By when? Again, measurable goals. So you've just gone through the Getting Started module, and there are a lot of things to consider. After this module, there's going to be 7 more just about Tier 1 PBIS. It's going to be how to predict kid behaviors, how to develop plans, how to teach, how to give feedback, and then we're going to talk at the end about how to monitor and how to make data-based decisions. And these are all going to be described in similar modules like this. So as we end this module, I just want to remind you that committee planning grid is available here as a PDF. The ABRI Student Failure Survey, which you can use just like it is or modify, is available here. And once again, that PBIS planning form is available. So feel free to contact us with any questions you have, and please continue watching these modules and let us know what you think.